Okay, welcome back to the second part of the screencast. Um, you probably, especially if you are teaching math lessons, you probably have seen similar examples like the one that I shared with you with Molly. If you aren't teaching math, you may have seen other problems if you had students work in small groups. Maybe students not really participating or some copying, some variation of what we see with Molly's explanation. So while people thought, oh, small group work is a great idea because students learn from each other, when we did a closer look at it, because the research on it was all over the place. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. But when you start getting into what's actually being said and what's happening, you begin to realize that one of the reasons why it doesn't always work is because of this lack of intersubjectivity when students are actually trying to explain the things that they are saying. So this video highlights that we need to be explicit about our thinking so students can actually learn. Um, we must select our words very carefully. In other words, we need to be using the academic language associated with our content area. So math, it's clear that we need to be using specific language that's going to help students make sense of that particular content. But the same thing with all the other content areas, whether it be science, biology, or chemistry, or social science with history, or political science, there are certain words that the student needs to hear and make sense of in order to gain understanding within that content area. And not only do we need to use that academic language, we need to be encouraging them to use that, because only by their using it, they will gain understanding, they will develop understanding of these concepts. So it's very important that we need to find ways to gain intersubjectivity. So clearly, one issue of intersubjectivity is regarding the words that we use. It is a challenge to make sure that we are communicating very effectively. And I will admit that I often fall short. It is rather commonplace, according to Ramdvit, that we do fall short. Unless we're with our best buds, our friends, our family, when we're talking to strangers, when we're talking to class, when we're talking to people who come from a different cultural background than us, it is likely that we're not always going to use the best language or words to make ourselves understood. But that is something that we need to work toward, and it's an ongoing process no matter how long you've been teaching. All right, the second point that I want to bring up is a point that comes from Donald Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things. Intersubjectivity is also about building shared understanding with the activities in which we want students to participate in and the tools we want students to use. So what do I mean by that? You can get a sense from this little book cover about the design of everyday things that maybe the things that we want students to use, maybe the way that we design them, may not be the way that they actually use them or the way that they want to use them, or may not be as effective for them as it was for us to use it. Here are some real-world examples. So here's a door. Where should we push on the handle? Should I push in the center, to the left, or should I push on the right? My not knowing reflects the lack of intersubjectivity. Why? Because the designer of this door understood how to open the door using this particular mechanism. But the way it was designed wasn't necessarily clear to me. I don't know where to push. And as a result, I'm going to struggle a little bit when opening the store. Maybe have to do push a couple of times before I get it right. So that is an example of a lack of intersubjectivity. Here's another example. Should I be pushing? Does this handle suggest that I should be pushing the door, or should I be pulling? It doesn't necessarily, kind of make it clear to me that I could do either one. If I pull on this, will it open? If I push on it? So it's the design sending me, letting me know what I should be doing. Is it clear, or is it causing a little bit of a challenge? Here's another example. On a stove, so this is more of an illustration, but some stoves, these are the burners, and here are the knobs. Which knob turns on which burner? Is it clear which one does it if it's laid out this way? One way to make it more clear is to lay out the burners and the knobs like this. And so take a look at your stove and see how it's set up. Is it clearly communicating to you what you should be doing or how you should be using it? So these are some of the real world examples. Let's talk about some classroom examples. So let's talk about getting students working in small groups. I want them to get into small groups, to debate, I'm creating a lesson where I want students to be in a small group where they're going to debate and share and express their ideas and support their ideas and hopefully grow from that experience. And I've designed it all nice, but they see it as an opportunity to compete, or maybe they see it as an opportunity to socialize. So my design of the lesson is not clearly communicated or is not shared by my students. Or let's say, this is an interesting idea here. Learning how to solve a math problem in a new way when you already know how to solve how to do math. So many math students in the class, you've taken a lot of math courses as an undergraduate. Now you're in a methods course, and the methods course is going to teach you a new way to solve math problems. It may be new to you to solve this math problem, but you have all of this math knowledge, and so this new way is sort of being added on to this wealth of math knowledge that you already have. But imagine you're teaching this new way of math to do the math problem to students who don't have that same knowledge of math. So they're approaching it a little bit differently than you. There's potentially a lack of intersubjectivity. How can you understand how someone will learn how to do the math problem, this new math, when they don't have the same kind of math knowledge that you have? Does that make sense? Are you following me there? Here's another example. Sentence frames. You see a lot of teachers using sentence frames. They're posted up on the wall on posters or given out on sheets of paper. So I can give those sentence frames to students, but do students see these sentence frames as scaffolds to extend their thinking when they don't know what to say? Or is it that they see it as fill in the blank? Okay, I'm not thinking about this, I'm just adding on whatever I should be, but I'm not really learning how to generate a full sentence or using academic language appropriately in this sentence. So how are these scaffolds actually being perceived by the students? Are they seen as an actual scaffold in which it's intended, or do they see it as just, let me just fill in the blank? Another example is taking Cornell notes. Do the students see the use for these notes? Will note-taking actually help the student perform better on assignments or assessments? By taking notes, is this going to help them prepare for college? Does the student even know what the purpose is? So how do we align the purpose of this particular activity with what the students can expect or know? How can we get their thinking about it in line with what you want them to be getting out of these notes? All right, here's two more examples. These are, I found them online about students complaining about assignments that their teacher gave them. So I'm going to read this for you real quickly. For English, my teacher said that by Monday, everybody must go watch Avatar in theaters and write a paper on it. I find this to be complete BS, and I don't like that he should have given this assignment because of its high inconvenience. I don't want to go to the theaters again. I just went last week to go see Youth in Revolt, and damn, it's expensive to go to the movies. I have never been interested in Avatar, and I don't want to go spend 3 hours watching it. I asked him if we could watch A Clockwork Orange because even without seeing Avatar, everybody, including myself, know it's a better movie. I have it, and it would be less expensive for people to just rent it if they didn't, and the content he wants in this assignment would easily be applied to A Clockwork Orange. He instantly rejects that, and now I either fail my assignment or I get detention after school, or I have to waste 3 hours of my weekend watching a movie I don't want to see. Does anyone else feel this same way about the assignment? Clearly, there's a lack of intersubjectivity. The teacher has an idea about what the student should be doing with this movie Avatar, and the student doesn't get it. In fact, the student is all like, well, maybe I can alter it this way. And maybe he can, or maybe he can't. It's not clear because there's a lack of intersubjectivity. It's really important for us to try to achieve that. Here's another quick example. I hate it when teachers give stupid busy work assignments. Or I think this example is coming from a parent, not from a child. But I hate it when teachers give stupid busy work assignments. Usually I love my school district, but must admit I'm incredibly frustrated with an assignment my dear son had. They're reading Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So for an assignment, he had to color, cut out, it was a pattern, and then glue together a replica of the Globe Theater where Shakespeare's plays were frequently performed. When husband found out about it, he said, "Coloring, cutting, pasting in the 9th grade?" Then the parent goes on and complains about how she got burned and all of this stuff. So clearly, there's a lack of intersubjectivity. How does building the Globe Theater help in the understanding about Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet? I'm not saying it doesn't help. I'm just saying that clearly the parent, in this case, and possibly even the student, is not have intersubjectivity with the teacher. So what's the point? To be effective, or to approach becoming effective, teachers must establish intersubjectivity as best they can with their learners. To do that, you need to build relatedness. That is, you need to have some understanding about who the students are, their cultural and personal experiences, and in order to make the learning relevant. We need to have students talk in the classroom. We need to hear from them so that we can better understand what's going on in their private universe. How are they making sense of the material that we are giving them? We need to listen to our students when they talk, because that's important. That's going to tell us how to make sense of what they're doing. And we need to use what we learn about students' thinking to plan future lessons. So we can't just be going through activities. We need to be saying, oh wow, Johnny got this. Let's move ahead. Or they're not getting this. They're stuck on this. They keep making the same mistakes. There's a misconception here. I need to make some kind of adjustment to my lesson. I need these scaffolds. So these are some of the things that we need to do in the classroom. Another thing that we need to do is to try to bring in lots of examples in our classrooms. We need to use visuals as much as possible. Try to provide opportunities for students to hear things. So this auditory approach, and then this kinesthetic approach as well. We need have different ways in which to have students interact with the material, hoping that one or more of these ways will be helping the student make sense of the material. Now, lastly, situated cognition. This is where it's basically in the title. Cognition is thinking, situated is where do we situate our students' thinking? Thinking that takes place in authentic and relevant context. Vygotsky really felt strongly that our thinking usually is situated within our environment, within the activities that we do. So, and we learn these thinking very seamlessly, very easily when we're engaged in relevant or authentic activities. Likewise, in the classroom, we want to situate students' thinking in authentic and relevant context as much as possible. So I have an example, this picture that draws upon the article on everyday, oh my gosh, I forgot the name of the part, but it's about everyday pedagogy about basketball and about how this young teenager plays basketball, could do percentages in his head very easily, on the basketball court because he's doing free throws and he's trying to calculate how good he is at doing it. But when he is in the classroom working on worksheets and there's no basketball in sight, he struggles with that. He can't seem to do it, the same mathematical problem. So if you have a chance, read that article. It's very interesting. So in a sense, we're thinking about, the student is thinking, why do I need to know this? The student is asking you, how should I situate my thinking about this? So when they're asking that question, they're basically are asking you to give them that information. When the content we teach is detached from actual use, students' learning is situated in artificial spaces. So when we give them those worksheets, when we give them tasks that seem to have no point, which, by the way, I feel strongly that building foldables is one of those ways in which we are placing students in those artificial spaces. We're situating their thinking in artificial spaces. It's not real life. We want to have the students transfer the thinking from one context to the next. If we situate their context in, or situate their thinking in an activity where there's less likely to transfer, they're going to be not as interested, not as engaged, and the learning is going to be meaningless and useless. So we need to try to find ways in which to make the learning much more authentic. We need to make strong connections between what we teach and how it can be used in the real world. So for example, in teaching writing, the purpose is to communicate. The purpose of writing is to communicate. With that in mind, then, we should be having students share their writing, not just with us, the teachers, but with each other, with their peers, with their parents, with community members. Get them writing for real purposes. In social studies, write for the school, write for parents, write for community. Get them writing real stuff. Use portfolio so that students can see the changes over time. So that's that. What I'd like you to do is to come to class on Monday, bring a lesson plan like you did last Monday. But what I want you to do is to identify opportunities for where there may be lack of intersubjectivity. Um, So think about, if I'm teaching this lesson, where might there be a lack of intersubjectivity? And then based on that, I want you to find a way to foster greater intersubjectivity. So this is something that is true for any lesson plan, anywhere, anytime, by any person, no matter how new they are at teaching or experienced they are at teaching. There are opportunities where there's going to be a lack of intersubjectivity. Try to identify that ahead of time and then try to correct it or minimize it. I also want you to think about, how are you situating students' thinking? How are you situating it in authentic and relevant ways? Something that they can have transfer, not just within the classroom, but beyond the classroom? Or are you situating the thinking in artificial spaces? So it just seems to be only in that classroom that this is relevant. And if it is in those small artificial places, try to think about ways in which you can make it more relevant. So that's your task. We'll talk about it in class on Monday, and we'll finish up with the two. I think there are two groups that we need to finish listening to. Thank you for listening to the screencast. I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.